football. And this evening, we're honored to have Mr. Caesar Handa. He's an official in the FKF Transition Committee. He'll be telling us more about the fate of Kenyan football, because remember, we had been banned by FIFA earlier this year in February. But as it is right now, we don't know the fate of the game. But Mr. Caesar Handa, good evening. Thank you for joining us on the show. I think the first question most people are asking, especially for the Premier League, is when is the Football Kenya Premier League supposed to start?
Well, thank you very much, Bernard, and good evening, viewer. I think there are lots of questions that are being asked about football in the country at the moment. But to answer your question precisely, the football season for KPL was scheduled to start on the 24th of this month. Unfortunately, we've had to push that a little forward for reasons that many of the players that are turning up for KPL teams are actually engaged in the ongoing Kekoso games. So there was a request by the teams to have the game, the beginning of the league postponed to the 1st of October. So that is when the leagues, the KPL is supposed to kick off.
So that is the official position. The Kenyan Premier League is going to start on the 1st of October.
Yes, please.
Makori, interesting sentiments in terms of how the league has, we were expecting to start on the 10th of September. 2 weeks later, we're expecting it to start this coming weekend. And now it's moved again on the 1st of October. I'm skeptical whether it will actually start on that 1st of October.
No, thanks, Bernard. Caesar has told us that it's beginning on October 1st. And I mean, it's already late in the day. I know Caesar's been a football player. What he did know is that he played for Gor Mahia in his prime. And he knows about building up to the season. A lot of teams have spent a lot of money building up, knowing that the season will start mid of this month. Ulinzi Stars were in Laikipia, you know, for high altitude training. Bandari came to Nairobi for high altitude training. Tusker, I think, just left Kericho. They have been in the highlands also for high altitude training. So the teams have been building up to the kickoff. And now when a player is really building up, and then you tell him that you know, the kickoff has been pushed, there's a lot that happens. And Caesar knows that in terms of preparation. So I really don't know. I'm as confused as everybody else.
Yes.
I don't know, Caesar.
Yeah, the confusion, I think, is there because, yes, there have been those two postponements. I think they have been necessitated by circumstances sometimes beyond our control. Preparations are ready, and the league's supposed to kick off on October 1st. Yes, it's right to be skeptical given where we're coming from, and I really understand what Mr. Makori is talking about preparation, about organization. But the circumstances under which we have operated, I think we have been forced to do that. And again, this was on the request of the Premier League clubs. For example, Bandari, yes, they are prepared well, but the entire team is actually participating in this tournament. So the fixtures are ready. The venues are ready, the preparations are all ready, and we believe that the games will kick off on October 1st.
The league will resume, yes. You've said it's going to start on the 1st of October, but yes. Bottom line, we all know that we are currently suspended by the football governing body, and I think it's important for us just to understand exactly what that signifies. And I'll just be running something just to remind ourselves of what this means. Kenya currently is banned by FIFA, and that means that CAF has kicked out Kenya from the AFCON 2023 qualifiers. That means we're not going to take part in the next edition of the African Cup of Nations, even the qualifiers, obviously. Kenya will also not be represented in the CAF Champions League, will also not be represented in the CAF Women's Champions League, will also be not represented in the CECAFA Under-17 qualifiers. What's the current situation? Have you reached out to FIFA? What do we need to do? Because even as we're having this league resume, what does it mean? It does not have any significance per se.
I think to say that it doesn't have significance, I think is a little harsh. What I would say, yes, we as a country have been put in the cold room, so to speak, by FIFA for reasons that we are all aware of. And it has been the hope of this country that at this point in time, all these issues or differences that have occasioned this would be ironed out so that we can go back to international football. I want to say that there have been engagements with FIFA, and those engagements continue. And we
What is the most recent one with FIFA? Because I think that needs to be clear.
Well, the engagement with FIFA is at the level of the CS
Okay.
and the level of PS. I think they're doing a very good job in terms of informing FIFA and also trying to update FIFA on what has happened this far. Of course, some of these decisions about as to whether FIFA is going to drop the ban and readmit Kenya is based on a few other issues that those engagements that are going on. So all we can do for now is to get the teams to participate in the leagues, and we want to believe that for what we have done and what we have achieved this far, that FIFA will see it fit to engage properly with Kenya so that we can find a way forward in terms of taking the next steps from where we have reached this far.
But Caesar, Tusker won the league last season, after a whole season of preparing, a lot of expenses. They were not in the Champions League draw. Kenya didn't, play qualification matches for CHAN. Now we have the World Cup in Qatar coming up in November, December, which means if the situation, the status quo continues, again, we might not be in the next cycle of qualifying for 2026 in USA and Mexico. It means that players will have to wait until 2030 to play in the World Cup. That's a whole generation of players gone. And I want to believe that, again, with the change of government, the talks with FIFA will go back again to square one. And there's a lot of concern about this back and forth and avoiding, taking the bull by the horns and saying, look here, this is what FIFA wants. Let's do what FIFA wants as a quick stopgap measure. Have the former FKF office back, maybe the Doris Petra's chair, because Nick said he was stepping down, and then re-engage FIFA, do snap elections, and then we'll be in the good books of FIFA. That's what I personally think, and many people believe that, Bernard, you cannot take on FIFA head-on and win.
And I think also, just to ride on what you've said, to enable those steps, the one critical document is the FKF, is the Constitution. So what is the status of the Constitution? Because even if there are issues with the Constitution, I'm sure you took it back to the clubs. Has it been ratified by the FIFA Governing Council? Because that is what will determine whether we actually have the elections to elect a new executive committee.
There are differing opinions on how this can be approached. I just want us to step back a little and do look at where we have come from in terms of football. That we have crossed paths with FIFA as a country is not something that started yesterday. And I really don't think that it has been the intention of the government of Kenya, whether the previous administration or the current administration. I don't think it has been the intention of any of the persons leading sports in this country to create a situation where we are in confrontation with FIFA. I think let us agree that both FIFA and the government of Kenya really want football to be played in this country, both at local and international level. There are certain issues, of course, that there are disagreements upon, and how then that needs to be resolved has been the question. I've heard what Mr. Makori has talked about with respect to bringing back the former office and Doris, re-engaging with FIFA so that there can be a solution. That is one way of doing it, and I want to believe that what I said earlier pertains, that there is engagement with FIFA at a certain level, and we want to believe that sooner rather than later those will be resolved. With respect to the issue of the Constitution, constitution making at whatever level should be a task that is carried a little more diligently that we've seen in the past with respect to football. So the caretaker committee and the transition committee, I think, have gone way beyond what perhaps would be expected to engage with stakeholders at different levels and at all levels to come up with a constitution that has been subjected to validation by clubs and other stakeholders. The ratification by FIFA has not been done, but we want to hope that it is going to be a document that is going to guide the management of football in this country going forward. Because for me, from where I sit, I look at the constitution that we have been using to run football, and you see certain loopholes that certain personalities have taken advantage of over time.
You're talking about the presidents.
Well, president is the head of that institution. I want to believe that if we are talking of taking advantage, I want to believe that yes, it would be mentioned. So that now we need to have this constitution now that has been subjected to validation by the clubs and other stakeholders that is going to guide football going forward. We don't want a situation where every so often we are basically having issues with FIFA or having issues with our local administrators, and we have to, the government has to disband or to bring in a caretaker committee. We'd like a situation where once an office is elected, it's elected properly. They take us through the process, the time that they're supposed to be in office. If it's a two-term period, it goes through the two-term period. Another office is elected and we go on. That
so
remains
it's at what
our
stage,
hope.
the constitution?
The constitution has been done. It has been subjected to verification, validation by clubs. So now it is supposed to be given to FIFA to be able to ratify it for purposes of elections. But we didn't want to have elections under the old constitution and also come back with the problems that we have been dealing with our soccer.
According, it still feels like we are still in a state of abeyance, because we are not too sure about the certain timelines. I think from what I'm getting from you is that it's all dependent on FIFA. Have you already sent that particular document to FIFA?
The document, yes, has been presented to FIFA.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, yeah, like you're saying, it's like one step forward, two steps backwards. I'm sure next week you will find the new cabinet secretary coming with his own thinking and maybe throwing the spanner in the works or, proceeding. I think, I don't know, Caesar, I mean, Kenyans are really tired. People want to see Tusker, Bandari playing in the Champions League. People want to see players, playing for the national team on international level. This back and forth, I think there is more to it than meets the eye. We lost television, and that was a very, very, in my opinion, Bana, that was the death of Kenyan football, when we lost live television coverage. Just when our women, for example, the league was becoming more vibrant, look at how the women players were out there. Akida in Greece.
Corazon Aquino.
Yeah, Corazon recently won the Sekafa with the Simba. Players are even deciding to leave the country to get more airtime, more competitive play, and that's when their careers can progress.
And I
agree
with you, Elias, agree with you totally, that the sooner this is sorted, the better. Because really, I don't think there's any one of us who would wish to be in office a day longer than is necessary. What we are saying is that sometimes it becomes a little painful to fix a problem. And the season really is wasted, and you said that a little earlier. But we want to believe that it's something that can be fixed once and for all, that we put in place systems and institutions that can work for us going forward. Yes, there have been those cases where players are suffering, and indeed we feel for the players who are suffering, and we hope that even with the change of government, that whoever is going to come into that office, we pick it up from where we are without self-interest, without individual interest. I think that perhaps would bring us a solution that would be long-lasting and will not have to go back to this situation anytime soon.
Well, allow us to just take a very short break. We'll be back with much more on Sport on Stage. You remember the conversation online. What are your expectations for the new cabinet secretary? Hopefully, that will be announced in the course of the coming few weeks. What are your expectations? Remember, the hashtag is Sport On. Send in your responses and feedback to @Bernard Ndong, @Elias Makori, and @NTV Kenya. Of course, just share your feedback regarding that particular question. We take a very short break. We are back with much more after this. Welcome back to the show. Now it's time to take a look at the feedback. Remember, we'd asked you at the beginning of this broadcast, what do you think? What are your expectations in terms of the new cabinet secretary who hopefully will be appointed in the coming weeks by President William Ruto? We're asking what are your expectations? And there's a lot of interesting feedback here from different people. We have Ferdinand Omondi. You say, can we first discuss how the sports ministry is almost always handed to a political? How do we reward him or her? Interesting sentiment there, Elias.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, people have always complained that we get second-rate cabinet secretaries. But I must say, Amina Mohamed really tried in her final stint. And in my opinion, yeah, we need somebody who is well-versed in sport. But on the other hand, not all good sportsmen make good administrators. Remember,
Right.
Michel Platini was a player of the year
Yes.
for France, but then it ended up
Everything
being
went downhill.
downhill.
Right. Claudia Onsari, you say that support our sports people with housing, meals, doctors, coaching kits, eliminate all embarrassing situations where our sports people find themselves. FKF, streamline discipline and professionalism. I think I'd put this to you, Mr. Caesar. How have you been supporting the players and the teams during this entire period? Because I know that's been a very, very big challenge in terms of funding, because I know you've been funded by the ministry.
Yeah, yes, with the coming in of the caretaker committee, the government has been supporting the clubs in terms of monthly stipend. This has gone on, this went on throughout the league, and at the amount of money that was given depended on from Kenya Premier League to the lower division. So I think the support was very necessary because a lot of these teams did not have the sponsorship that would allow them to participate in the leagues, but the government came in. But this cannot continue because governments really are not supposed to fund
Right.
the clubs, and we hope that if everything comes back to normal, that we create a situation where sponsors can come in and support our clubs.
Your mandate ends, I think, in the next few weeks, because I know it had been extended a few times. So what happens? Because when the league resumes, there's no sponsorship per se. Once again, I think we're not too sure how things are going to be, because from the 1st of October, as you say, the league is going to resume. Your mandate will be ending perhaps mid-October, if I'm not wrong. So what happens?
Yeah, the engagements. One of the things that we have done is we have convened discussions with, for example, Kenya Premier League clubs. And Kenya Premier League clubs have mandated the Kenya Premier League Limited. It was a formation of these clubs to basically take over the running of the Kenya Premier League. I think that is what's happening in professionally run leagues, and we want to believe that being the main stakeholders, I think these clubs have a responsibility to have KPL, which they are shareholders, to run the league. So that will happen. But we also believe and hope that sooner rather than later we'll have the intervention by FIFA, so that we can have the normalization starting off towards bringing into place a new office to run the league.
Right, let's take a look at one final feedback here. I'm sure this is not the actual lead in Nyoro. I'm very certain of this.
I hope it's not.
I doubt it. But you say that it should be a state department under the Ministry of Interior. Very interesting suggestion and recommendation. I wonder why.
I don't even know. I mean, if anything, we need a fully fledged sports ministry.
Exactly.
With its own budget and, to focus on infrastructure development. We need new stadiums. I mean, how do you become a state department? That's what we want to run away from.
Yes.
At the moment, it's a state department under the Ministry of Sports,
Yes.
Culture and Heritage. We need a fully fledged, well financed sports ministry.
Mr. Caesar, what would be in your wish list for the new CS?
Yes, I'm total agreement with Elias that sport is big, sport is huge in terms of even in terms of revenue it generates, in terms of the people it impacts, and particularly the younger generation. Look at what's happening when you showed us Real Madrid versus Atletico yesterday. The sheer number of people who go to the stadium and the number who are watching these games all over the world, and the monies that are involved is huge. And so sports is not a backwater ministry. It should not be a backwater ministry. Sports is big, and sports is generating a lot of revenue, and it deserves a full-fledged, well-funded ministry on its own.
Okay, right. Interesting sentiments. Definitely, Makori, feedback. This interesting one here.
Yeah, we need to go back to factory settings in football. Disband everything and start afresh. I mean, we need a new beginning because the damage has been done already, and we can't sink any lower.
Right.
We can't continue digging, as they say. We have to get out of the hole and, catch up with the Joneses.
Definitely. We definitely need to get out of that hole. Thank you so much, Mr. Caesar, for joining us. Of course, he's an official of the FKF Transition Committee, just sharing his sentiments there. Thank you so much for making time to join us this evening to get some sense of what to expect. But one key thing you've mentioned is that the league officially resumes on the 1st of October. And hopefully before then, Kenya will be in good terms, will be outside the crosshairs of FIFA, and perhaps will be able to be returned back to global football. But let's focus on a different sport, and let's focus on volleyball. Now, Kenya professional volleyballer Jane Washu has been based in the Seychelles from 2017. She penned a deal with Anse